Well, Deb, welcome.
Hi, I'm so glad to
It's,
be here with you.
I'm so touched and really grateful and so excited. We are acquaintances. We met in the Bay Area through wonderful Warren's Boy Crisis book circle. We
Yeah.
sat around, and I think that's how we initially met. And we
Yeah,
had a
with
meal
Dr.
together.
Farrell. Yeah.
Dr. Warren Farrell. Let's put the name out. The Boy Crisis. Unless you know more than I do, the most recent book written with the data about boys around the world.
Yeah, I think it might be. And
Okay.
it's certainly I feel like one of the most well researched, documented, a lot of books are great about boys and men, but this one I think is pretty substantially backed up by a lot of research and evidence. So it's
Yes. So the Boy Crisis is one of my mother of son Bibles and a
yes.
coach of mothers of sons as well. So where are you living now?
In Scottsdale, Arizona,
Oh my goodness, a desert lady. And
in the desert.
tell me about your sons, their age, maybe where they are, what they're up to.
Yeah. So I have one son who is 20 and he is here with us in Scottsdale and spending the summer with us. And we're gonna be leaving the heat for a little while. And so when we sold our house, I'll give you a quick little story about him is that when we sold our house last year, it was a year earlier than we really wanted to sell the house. And we got a kind of an offer that we couldn't turn down. And I knew he would be disappointed because he has a huge friend group where we were living. So we made a promise to him that we would spend a month this summer. So between his sophomore and junior year, we would spend a month back where we were. We literally rented a house about 5 houses away,
Nice.
purely coincidental because it was a neighbor who told us she was leaving, that they rent their place in the summer. So we're going to stay there for a month. So he gets to be with his friends for a month. And then we're going to go to Tahoe for 2 weeks. So we're spending this really enjoyable summer together. My husband and I both work from home. So that's great. And so he's actually sunbathing like outside my window right now.
Very nice. Get some Arizona vitamin D.
I know,
Very
right?
nice.
And then,
Oh,
yeah. And then I have an almost 22-year-old, like in 2 weeks, he'll be 22, and he just graduated from college and he's taking a gap year. He's applying for medical school and he's staying in the Boston area where he went to school. Both of my boys went to school now, go and went to the same school in the Boston area. So they were at the school together,
they
which is
had an overlap
2
1 or 2 years in
years,
college.
2 years.
Oh,
Yeah.
how precious. We just kind of don't know that's going to happen, right?
Yeah, it's been kind of a dream come true, especially because we live so far away. So
Yeah.
whenever we go visit, we get to visit one place and really
Oh,
immerse ourselves in their amazingness.
of
So,
course. Of
yes.
course. There's so many visuals as you're describing this.
Yes.
Great. Okay, so I have a quote here that I'd like to share with you and get your mother of son's wisdom.
Okay.
And it's what is it? Oh, wait, excuse me, that's a different. What sons hear and feel from their mothers about men and maleness contributes to the man they will become. So what our sons hear and feel from us about what we, I guess, think about men and maleness contributes to the man they will become. So just reflecting back to when you first had your sons, your thought process then and over time, floor is yours.
Hmm. Well, first I would just say, yes, I agree about that quote. I really believe that. And I like that it included hear and feel because sometimes, we can be good at saying the right things, but we're not really integrated on it. We say what we want them to know, but we don't really feel it ourselves. So I think that was really important. I guess a couple places I want to go. Um, I was I have two older brothers, and I worked in technology. And so I was always with men, and I felt really comfortable around men. So when I had two boys, even though I think there was a part of me that would have wanted a daughter, like I'm not denying that. And I have two older brothers and was a girl, so I was like maybe hoping maybe by the third one, which we never went for, I'd have a daughter. But I have done a lot of soul searching and feel really that I was given two boys for many reasons. And
Mm.
I feel like I'm meant to be a mom of boys for sure. And when I first had my boys, I didn't even think about it. Like that at that moment, I didn't even think about it. I just was like, I have these beautiful boys. I love them to death. And, it wasn't until a little later that I was like, maybe we'll try for another and we'll have a daughter. Um, I feel like I was blessed in that way. Like I loved every moment of them. I loved the way that they were in the world. I loved their high energy even. There was so much to love about them. So I do feel like in general, like I have a positive feeling about men and boys. And as I started to when my kids were little, I feel like I had been a little bit cocooned by I was blessed that I was able to stay home with them. I lived in a new area when my oldest was born and didn't know that many people. And so I was kind of raising him alone, which was on the one hand really hard. And on the other hand, kind of allowed me to find my own way as a mom. And then we moved to California and I had my second one. And again, I'm brand new in California. I don't know anybody. And for the first couple of years, I was meeting people in play groups and things like that, but still was kind of by myself. And in some ways, again, I will say, I think it made me a really attentive, attuned mother because I didn't have a million distractions about what I should be doing and comparing myself to others. But when I got into the world again, and I also did not watch the news, which I highly encourage people who are raising young children to give themselves the permission to have no news, no anything from the outside when you're raising your littles, because it pulls us away from our ability to be present with our children, in my opinion. I know that has nothing to do with boys, but just has to do with children in general. So I get back into the world again, and I kind of get pulled into this like narrative around kind of like a feminist narrative that starts to feel like there's something wrong with my boys. I start to
Mm.
take in this feeling of like, what's going on? Like in the schools, I could feel like the schools didn't feel like they were really set up for boys. And I watched even more than my boys. I watched a lot of my boys' friends struggling in the classroom, being high energy,
Mm.
teachers not knowing what to do with them, shaming them for who they were. And there was all this stuff happening that I'm just witnessing kind of from back, just my own opinion, right? I'm seeing what and I'm suddenly being invited to do my own work too on my own relationship with my husband. So I'm having kind of this awakening of like, do I even have the kind of relationship I think I have with men? Do I respect men as much as I think I respect men?
Mm.
So I have a little bit of this unraveling, and at this point my kids are now 5 and 7 years old, and my husband and I start to go through a marital crisis. And I I have to say I struggled for a little while in that time with my relationship with men. It did not translate into my relationship with my boys. I felt that they were just magical, amazing creatures. But I definitely didn't like that I could feel some stuff permeating through me about like my history with men and ways that I had been treated and things that had happened to me. And I felt like I had to heal. I had some healing to do. And so then I dove into some healing around trauma that I experienced around this time, maybe not around this time, but like in this time, in this overarching time, Me Too comes around, we're starting to, those 10 years there, I think it was really present that there was this kind of anti-male energy was what I felt, a little anti-male energy that I was feeling. And all of these things come together. And I realized, geez, I don't just have work to do in my marriage, but I have work to do to make sure that I raise boys into men that are able to feel intact, feel whole. And so I started to dive into reading about what I now would call the boy crisis, but at the time I did not know. And I read probably 4 books before. I don't even know if Warren Farrell's book was out yet when
No,
I don't remember when it was. So I read a few books. Uh, I just kept kind of pulling them off the shelf. Then I was in life coach training program, and the leader of the training program had us read, oh my gosh, what was Warren Farrell's original book that was written 7 years ago about men? Do you remember that book?
I'm seeing the cover. I'll need a moment to remember the name.
Well, maybe we can put it like in the notes or something like
Yes,
that, because I
yes.
have it on my bookshelf, so I will find it. But I read this book, and at the time it was probably 18 years before, and I was like, holy crap, this could have been written today.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it opened my heart so much to understanding men better, understanding my boys better, and realizing how important it was for me to be in right relationship with my husband and with my dad and with my brothers. And not to say, by the way, not to say that um, I felt that needed to happen like this. Because, everything in life for me has been more of a process than a destination. And I feel like everyone has the capacity. I guess what I'm trying to say is I wasn't perfect. So for anyone who's watching this, it's not like I became perfect about this. This was a journey for me because I have this, on the one hand, this part of me that has this excellent relationship with men and really feel like I have respect for men, and I'm in my behaviors and everything. Like I'm this person who has a great relationship, has great rapport, feels confident with men, feels like I'm capable of having a back and forth with them, not cowering, but not also overpowering. I felt like it was this really nice balance. And at the same time, I could feel that there were a lot of things I didn't understand about men, and that there are things that I had stories about men. And there are ways that I might have had ideas about men that had either been my experience or kind of conditioned beliefs. And I would hear women say things about their husbands that were so crass, such like stereotypical things. I would hear people talk about their sons in such stereotypical ways. And I was like, oh gosh, I don't want to be that way. So I feel like I had an awakening a little bit, like a little shakeup where I had to be more authentically reflective rather than just, yeah, of course I have a great relationship with men. That was kind of where I was before. And then I had to go to this place of, well, kind of, but I also I think we all have a complicated relationship with, even if you took men out of it and you went to our inner masculine and feminine energies, I think a lot of women had, I know I was raised in like feeling a little bit like being more masculine because I had 2 older brothers. Plus I had a mom who kind of wanted me to be tough and strong. She was a bit of a feminist mom, and she was like, you could do anything, you're powerful. I kind of developed a strong masculine in me, this strong, like get it done kind of I think I was looking for success and for, I wanted to be the smart one and the one who knew. And I feel like I had a strong masculine in me, but even that was something I had to grapple with, like, well, wait, am I out of balance? Where are we out of balance? So I feel like that was a chunk of time, probably when I met you, when I was really in the thick of
Mm.
some of these decisions, not decisions, but these I guess I would say like reflections in my life, and learning what I learned in the Boy Crisis and other similar books helped me to not just say the right things to my kids, but to really believe it, to really get it. And by the way, not only that, like I also was able to allow them to be themselves, because instead of me having my own lens of what I thought was like good and bad or right and wrong,
Mm.
I was able to go, wait a second, I might not know. Maybe I need to learn from them. Like maybe
Mm.
they're being perfectly fine the way they are. And for some reason, being a woman with my own way that I was raised and my own everything, I was like, ooh, I don't like that behavior. And I would want to shut it down instead of being like, wait a second, is it something I just don't understand yet? So that's kind of where I'll leave it for now. What do you think? What would you add to that? What do you think about all that?
I'm just so grateful to your honesty and fresh perspective and willingness to say, maybe I don't know, or maybe what I know I need to question. And I think that's valuable in everything, actually.
Yeah.
Wow. Yes. If you would take a moment, Deb, just to explain to whatever degree you're comfortable, your healing around this concept of men and maleness. What did you learn? Or
Mm.
what needed to shift in you or change?
Well, I think that my boys were really easy to love when they were little because, they're like kind of who doesn't love a baby? You know what I mean? Like that's kind of how I felt. And um, but I let me just see how I can say this succinctly.
Yeah, take your time.
I I feel like in some ways I might have been a little afraid of boys and men, but the way that I handled it was to go strong, confident, you can't hurt
Mhm.
me, that kind of thing. So I was more like a fighter with men in a good, not in a, I don't mean fight like, I mean, not to say I never fought with my husband, but I don't mean it in that way. I meant like feisty,
Yeah,
like we could kind of like spar a little with our words, and that was fun for me.
yeah. And that was
I
what was that a way for you? I want to really understand this. A way for you to feel safe around them?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. I kind of became one of the guys.
Okay.
And because I mean, I had two older brothers, I had to, they literally wouldn't let me be part of things unless I was acting the way they wanted me to act. So if I was being whiny or complaining or too silly, I couldn't even be with them. So I had to, they were like, this is what you do. If you want to be with us, you have to, be quiet and be our slave. Like kind of, I mean, hate to say
Yes.
that, but and they also like if I wanted to play hockey with them, they made me be the goalie. And because then they could like whack balls at, I mean, pucks at me. And
That's
yeah,
that's to them, that's great fun.
yeah. And honestly, for me at the time, I think I thought it was fun too. And I loved playing Matchbox cars. And I also loved playing dolls. But, like I would be down on the ground dirty with them because I had loved it and I liked being part of being with them. So I learned how to be really resourceful about, fitting in with men
Yeah.
and just enjoying not necessarily even romantic affection, just the attention that I got from being with guys that liked me being around. But I realized that by doing that, I was also abandoning myself in a lot of ways. Like I was being who I thought they wanted me to be because then I felt safe. Like I think there was a part of me that was like, if I'm too vulnerable, just like with my brothers, if I'm too vulnerable, if I'm too whiny, needy, soft, that I would probably get hurt. And so somewhere along the line, I think I learned that I can't trust men. I think somewhere along the line, and that's how I handled it. Was like, I'm going to be strong. I'm going to be tough. Well, I didn't want my kids to grow up and then me. putting that onto them, you know, my wounding onto them. So I needed to find a way to be in relationship with men where I didn't abandon myself, to be accepted, to get attention, to fit in. And that's probably the biggest healing that I did. I had to heal. I did have sexual trauma. I did have things that happened to me that were against my will. And even times when I did things that I just regretted. I wouldn't call them against my will in the sense that the person did something, the guy didn't do something to me, but I wished that I had had the inner strength to say no. And I think for me, there's a difference in those. Like one is my responsibility, the other is something got taken from me. And I like to differentiate for the purposes of that. I think they impacted me differently, you know. And but no matter what, these things that happened did build up some of my own fear and a need for self-protection, or a perceived need for self-protection. And so my way was like this tougher exterior. You can't hurt me kind of idea. But also, if you can't hurt me, that means that I'm not letting you in.
You don't know
I
me
never
really.
wanted my kids to get older and then somehow unconsciously not let them into my heart anymore because maybe I got triggered to my past or something. Not only that, though, I also noticed it was affecting my marriage. And so that was the other thing. So speaking to what sons hear and feel from us about what we think about men and maleness, like, well, if this is now coming out in my marriage and my husband and I are having conflict, well, obviously they're starting to receive some messages from me. And in those times, sometimes I was not probably acting in ways I would prefer to have acted, and my kids probably did get some of that. So I don't think our kids can, just for the record, I don't think you can raise kids without any, like, I think just it's the way society is, a way that, they're going to get some messages, but so do women. We all get messages that are unhealthy. I could just do the best I could to clean up my side of the street. And that's kind of what I did. Was I did the best I could to clean up my side of the street so that I could be as present with them and love them for who they are, and not put my own kind of crap on them, if you will.
Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you
Did I
for the
answer that
clarity. Yes,
about the healing?
yes, really, yes, I appreciate it. I will have another, I'm curious about uh, what benefits, if there were any, once you cleaned your side of the street, that you were able to see in your sons, given your commitment to healing and becoming whole, if you will.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, I think unconscious stuff seeps into everything we do, right? And it goes back to why no matter what I say, if I'm not actually embodying it, it's still going to be a mixed message in some way. So I think I became more aware of my own feelings, my own experience. So I was able to be aware of them. I wasn't acting unconsciously in the same way. And we can't know what we don't know. So, I'm sure there are still things that I do, maybe where I say something to them where I could have said something better, but I became more aware, and I was able to, rather than see them through a lens, like a veil of my own conditioning, my own perceptions, my own fears, my own wounding, my lenses got a little more clear. I was able to see them. I was able to see my impact on them. So even if I did say something maybe that wasn't helpful, I could see my impact on them and then have the opportunity to do repair, rather than perhaps when I was coming from that place of wounding, I wasn't even fully present. So I became more present, I think, is a piece of it. I think, it reminds me of something else. When I was raised in a home where I didn't really feel like anyone was super comfortable with feelings. And I was a pretty sensitive kid. And I think I learned not to express my feelings very much. And I mean, I know that I did, but I don't know. I don't remember everything about my childhood. And I remember when my older son was going into first grade. And so like, I never felt like I had a problem with my kids crying or anything like that until they started to cry over things that I thought were silly. Like,
Mm.
I want the blue cup. No, I want the blue cup. And then falling on the floor and having this huge tantrum. And I couldn't understand, like, that's so ridiculous. Why are you getting so upset? Like, this is in my head. Now, again, this goes back to, I probably didn't say that to them, but in my head, I'm like, oh, and I'm just like, okay, honey, you want the blue cup? Okay. You know what I mean? Like, I just did. Well, one day I was fortunate to be working with a therapist and went in and told her this. And she said to me, this is like really revealing how emotionally immature I was and how far I've come, that there's hope for all of us. That my, that my, I told her what happened. And I said, why does he get so upset over such ridiculous things? And she said something that now seems so obvious, but she said, maybe it's nothing to do with that. Like maybe he just has emotions about something, and maybe from the day or the day before, and this is just his way of releasing those emotions. Maybe he didn't feel safe to say it during the day to anybody, but then when he got home, he didn't have any other way to let it out. And then he let it out over that. And I literally said these words. I was like, hold the phone. What? It was like I had never conceived of the idea, even though I'm sure I did it. Like, for example, if I lashed out at somebody, maybe I was lashing out at them over some other thing that had happened. I was fully getting that maybe I had done it, but never put two and two together before. And that was like a moment in time that changed me. You have those moments that changed me in such a palpable way in my parenting. And then to realize that I didn't have to fix anything, that I could just hold him in my arms and say, sometimes it's hard to be in first grade, and it's just hard to be 6, or it's hard to be 7, or whatever it is. And it's okay. And I'm just with you. And I didn't need to make sense of their emotions in the way that I thought. Like, I thought that you can only cry if it makes sense. Like, of course you cried because you're tired, or of course you cried because you got hurt, but like you're crying over the red cup. That's dumb. And I was like labeling. And this was just an example of the kinds of things that unconsciously I was 100% sure I was right. I was 100% sure
So
that
true.
I was correct in everything that I was perceiving. And then I realized, no, I had my own wounding clouding my judgment. So the more that I clean off my lenses all the time, I'm always looking to get more clear on if I can see more clearly. And I don't see everything clearly. I'm sure I still hurt my kids unconsciously and then don't notice because I was caught up in my own control or my own, my own thing. But those kinds of things, like being able to allow my boys to have their emotions, not need to fix them, not need to control them, and just be present with them was, I think, another thing that was really, really helpful for them. So it wasn't just, so it's not just how it affected me, but I feel like for them, they were able to be free to be expressive about their emotions without judgment.
What a huge lesson all
Huge,
around, all around.
huge.
And then for them moving forward in
Yeah.
their
And
relationships.
exactly. And I think that there was another thing too. Like one thing I see a lot of people do is something that someone called fishing for pain, that I felt like I never did. And I think is actually kind of, it can be really hard. I think it can be, I understand the intention behind it, but it's like when you say things like, oh, who'd you sit with at lunch today? And then they're like, no one. And you're like, oh, was that sad? And we start kind of like looking for places that are painful instead of being like, how was that for you? They might have been like, great. I was so sick of talking to kids all day long. I needed to sit by myself, but we project our own stuff onto them. And then we start fishing for painful things. Or when someone's like when my kids came home and they said to me, so-and-so called me a name, I would be like, how was that for you? Because
Mhm.
I don't know like what they think. And
Great
they might be
question.
like, well, it was really uncomfortable. It was like, it was mean or something like that. Or like, I hated it or something. And then I'll be like, well, do you believe it? And then sometimes they would say no. And I'd be like, okay, so that's their opinion. And they'll be like, oh, yeah. So like there's a way that I think sometimes we can like when they are sad, we can turn it into something so much more than they just need a release of emotion.
And it might not
Yeah.
even be about that particular thing,
It might
like you
not be
said.
about that thing, like, right? It could have been like
Probably
yesterday's stuff
not.
comes up, the cup, and they have, because so much is I mean, so much is physiological, right? It's so much is like stored stress. And then when they get it, when any of us get a chance, we express that. In fact, I was just listening to someone talk about how part of the reason why we all carry so much stress in our body is because we feel, say, like, for example, we might feel like we need to defend ourselves in a situation, but then we don't do it. We don't do it. Maybe we go to people pleasing or we just retreat away, but we really needed to. I'm not saying we should have acted out to that person, but we needed, but it got the hormones kind of got stuck in our body and we got
Mhm.
stuck in like a sympathetic nervous system
Mhm.
space. And if you were an animal, you would have fought, you would have run away, or you would have frozen and then come up and shaken. And any one of those three things has a physical thing that happened that released the hormones and brought us back to homeostasis. Well, we don't usually have that. And so when
We need to shake.
right, well, that's why dancing and moving and running and shaking is so good for us because it's a way to release. And so if that child didn't get a chance to release the thing from yesterday, but then they are with us, they get a chance to cry and sob, they get to move that through their body and release it just like they're supposed to.
And if it's a safe place to do that, then it's healthy for them.
Yeah.
But if it's an unsafe and it's unacceptable space, what happens with that energy?
Yeah. Well, I mean, even when it's unsafe, a lot of these kids will still find a way, right? Because that's when I think you start having behavior like, I don't know, where they are acting out in more quote negative ways, they
Mhm.
start, maybe they're yelling more, maybe they
Mhm.
punch a wall or
Mhm.
something. So I think they're gonna find a way. I think humans will find a way.
Yes, they do. Yeah. Wow. Wow. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for your gems and jewels of mother
Mhm.
of son wisdom and your experience. And it's just so grateful. Is there anything else around when you think of what our sons hear and feel from us about men and maleness?
Oh yeah. Well, I will say,
Tributes.
yeah, I actually I asked my son before what he thought we should talk about, what I should talk about. And one of the
Love it.
things that he said, well, so a couple things. He said, well, let me just make sure I get this right. That what you think is mean is oftentimes not mean at all. Okay. This is one of the things he said. Now I'll explain it in a minute.
Mhm.
Like when guys are interacting with each other and when you and guys work out problems and resolve conflict differently than women do. And his point, though, was something that I really genuinely believe in my heart of hearts, is that women, I will speak for myself. I needed to make sure that I was not thinking I knew better and that I was going to impose upon them some way that I thought women relate better, kind of like that type of thing. Like women are evolved and we are better. So
Ooh.
speaking of, right? And so we need to teach boys how to be women. I mean, not really, but like kind of, right? And
Yes.
so one of the things I read in Warren Farrell's book that was one of like will stick with me forever is when he talked about the concept of, maybe help me out here, not banter. I don't think that was his word, but there was a concept of that boys, when they get together, do this thing where they tease, but that's not the right word for it either. Do you know what the word was that he used? Because it was a specific word.
I'm not getting it right now, but my son tells me about it all the time. He goes, that's just
Yeah.
the way we do things.
Yeah. And it's not, it's
And it primes them for difficulties in life.
exactly. It's one of the
And
things
here
they
the
talk-
mothers are going,
exactly.
what?
And do you know that I watched the guys around my kids and the ones that weren't participating in this, they've had a harder time as they've gotten older.
The ones that were not
were not
participating.
participating in it were like getting their feelings hurt from it. And I think that the feelings getting hurt might be because of mom's fishing for joy. That's just I mean, for pain, that might be, that's just a hypothesis. I don't know that.
Yeah.
But should I explain the concept just so people?
Well, sure. And I also want you to invite your son to come on this and have an interview.
I don't know if he would, but if he would,
Please ask him.
I'll ask him.
I would
Okay.
love to talk to him.
Yeah, that'd be
Go
fun.
ahead.
He's so he's awesome. I would love for you to talk to him because he's so wise. When so the idea behind it, and you chime in because I don't fully remember all the details, but the idea behind it is that as boys, and this starts pretty young, as boys start to relate to other boys, and they even know the difference between boys and girls. The boys know the difference between boys and girls in this way. They will do this thing where they kind of like poke fun at the other. And part of it is to see like the history of it from what I remember is that if I need to be able to depend on you in the future, in war, in the coal mines, out hunting, whatever.
In the boardroom.
Now, these days, if I need to depend on you, I need to know that if you get a little bit, your feelings hurt or something, you're not going to fall apart. You're not going to sit down and cry when I most need you the most. I need you to, I know. So there's a way that they're doing this thing to not to be mean, but to just be like, can I trust you? Can I trust you? Am I going to be able to trust you in difficult situations? And there's some truth to that. Some of them will, like when people are like, why are they mean to that kid or whatever? A lot of times they're not really mean. They just exclude them. I mean, that's mean, but I'm just saying like, it's not like they were saying something mean. They exclude, and it's part of it. It's like, it's a biological thing to some degree. It's like, oh, we need to form the team that's going to be able to handle difficult things in life. And you're not cutting it. And then we come in and we're like, be nice, just be nice to each other. I remember one time I was sitting around at a table with my son and like 5 of his friends. And my son is Jewish, one kid's Asian, the other kid is God, something else. Anyway, whatever it was. And they're like completely jabbing at each other. And they're like saying stuff to Jake that I'm all, okay. Now, I wasn't raised Jewish, but I think it sounds kind of offensive. Like, I'm not sure. But they like thought they were laughing. And Jake had no sign at all of nothing. If anything, he felt seen and known and loved. If anything, they all felt loved by each other because they like knew each other enough to kind of know their little weaknesses, poke at them, but they're buds. They're all buds. The only reason why you can do this is because we trust each other. Yeah. It's that kind of thing. Well, when I learned that, I was like, okay, this is on me. This is my issue that I have a hard time with this.
Yes.
This is my issue, not their issue. I don't need to change my children. I need to change me. and the way that I look at it. And so for me, that was a huge moment. And then I would say another thing was to believe in my husband having a tremendous amount of wisdom around them. And I thought I knew best. Mommy knows best. I don't have to check in. And then I realized that the more that I went to my husband and said to him, my husband had probably gotten a little quiet because I was like the bossy pants.
Mama bear.
So I started to go to him and say, what do you think we should do in this situation? And he would have a completely different perspective than me. And I was like, what? And sometimes I'd completely disagreed, but then like later I would think about it and be like, huh, that's just me being protective. I'm just being like, here are some things that showed up for me. Protective of them. Oh, I want them to be kind and loving because then, that's going to be good for them. But But also, I don't want other parents to think that I'm a bad parent because because I'm not punishing my child for saying that quote mean thing to their son.
Yes.
I didn't want to be making a mistake. Like maybe we're supposed to raise our kids in, this other way. But my intuition told me, no, I need to allow them to like follow some of these things. I mean, within reason. I wasn't promoting real mean behavior or anything like that. I had a line. I had a line inside of me that I didn't think could be crossed, or should be crossed. But I had to involve my husband more and realize they needed him.
Yeah. Father bear wisdom.
They needed him too. And I
Mhm.
needed to step back. So as the kids got a little bit older, I stepped back a little bit. I didn't always agree with everything that was going on, but I stepped back. And I felt like that was imperative. And their relationship is unbelievable. My husband and my boys' relationships are unbelievable. And I got them like till they were about like 11 or 12 years old. I got them like they were my little buds. They were all mommy. And then I saw things changing. And I needed to let it go. I needed to follow the flow of that change and facilitate that relationship, not be in the way of it, not have my own, I did have my own feelings about it. I cried a lot about what felt like a loss for me. It was a huge loss for me, but it was a gain. It was such a win for them. It was such a win for them to have that male role model to become to sort of move in as their primary. And I feel like I needed to be willing to move out of the way in order for that to happen. And I needed to trust. So I was so thankful I had done so much work on understanding men better and understanding that I don't have all the answers.
Great wrap up.
Yeah.
I just feel like I traveled through the years with you, with your wonderful men and your wisdom and open-heartedness and bravery to, check back in here, heal this, and then just see a different picture. Wow. Huge. This has been so amazing. I am
Thank
so
you.
grateful.
It's been
Thank you
so
for
fun
your
for me too.
time. I'm
And it's
so
been
happy.
fun to be reflective of it because, how often do we really get a chance to sit down and talk about these things? We really don't, and to be able to say, and if
You
I
definitely
can,
don't.
if even just one mom watches this and has like one takeaway, because that's one thing, I don't know, for me, it's like asking a person at the end, what's your key takeaway? Like I'm asking the moms right now, like, what's your key takeaway? Do one, don't take the whole thing. Take one thing from this that was the most resonant and walk forth with it, because as everyone saw me, I had a big change just by having the realization that my kids might be crying not for that reason, but for something else, and it changed my entire life. I've had many of those. Sometimes it can be one little thing that just opens us up and says, "Oh,
I think I'm of the mind there's a lot of little things here.
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
And one is good. You're right.
Yeah.
Well, dear, thank you so much.
Thank
So
you.
grateful.
Thank you. It's been so sweet to have this chance. Thank you for inviting me on the show.
You're welcome. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.